Today, we are going to take a look at the playoff standing as it currently is before the Ravens take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in a divisional matchup. I didn't want to do it, but Buffalo Bills couldn't help themselves. They just can't seem to keep Lamar's name out of their mouths. So I'm going to bring up some stats and some key points that debunks darn near everything that they said. So make sure that you stick around to the end so you can hear the difference of what they were saying to actually what is going on. And lastly, a conspiracy theory that blew up in the NFL's face, but thank goodness for the Ravens, it never occurred.
But first, Ravens fly. Let's fly.
All right, so the Baltimore Ravens this Saturday afternoon take on the Pittsburgh Steelers at M&T Bank Stadium. The 10-4 Steelers face off against the 9-5 Ravens in a battle for AFC North supremacy. Now, if the Ravens beat the Steelers on Saturday, they will not take over the division lead because the Steelers actually have a better conference record. They will actually be tied with divisional records, but because of the conference record, the Steelers have a slight edge when it comes to the AFC North crown. But the Steelers do have two tough games following the Ravens matchup. And normally when the Ravens play the Steelers, that very next game, they seem to struggle. And that next game is against the Kansas City Chiefs. Then the Steelers end their season off with the Cincinnati Bengals, who are on a mission themselves, who have a slight playoff chance if they win the rest of their games and get a little bit of help. So the Bengals have something to play for. The Kansas City Chiefs are trying to retain that top spot so they can get a first round bye. So it's not an easy going for the Chiefs. But first things first, the Ravens have to beat the Steelers this Saturday. Not just to get the crown, not just to have a home playoff game, but to get out of a fog mentally where they don't seem to think that they can beat the Steelers no matter how talented they are. Now, right now, the Ravens are sitting at the 5th seed, slated to play the Houston Texans. But if things shake out the right way and the Steelers actually lose and then they go on to lose another week and the Ravens went out, the Ravens may be hosting a game versus the Los Angeles Chargers or the Denver Broncos, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals, all teams that they have beat previously during the regular season. So there is a lot hinging on this Saturday's game. And we really will not know too much more until after that game. So by the time the Sunday games start, we'll have a little clearer picture as towards the Ravens' path as what they need to do for the rest of the season going forward. And make sure tomorrow night you come back to the channel or you go to Ravens Talk with Yolanda, where we will be previewing the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Ravens matchup. Now, I know what you all came here for, and I'm about to give it to you.
Come on, give it to me.
I'm about to talk about the Buffalo Bills, and for some reason, they can't keep Lamar's name or his MVP out of their mouths. They claim, oh my gosh, y'all robbed him last year. Josh Allen is deservedly so, rightfully the MVP of this season. Maybe he is, maybe he is not. But to me, the thing is, you just keep talking about it isn't going to make it better. And your logic is flawed and skewed to my point of view. Now, you say Lamar stole Josh Allen's MVP last season. And if you look here, Josh Allen wasn't even the second or third choice, wasn't even the fourth. He came in 5th place. So how did Lamar steal something from somebody that wasn't even in the top 3? So Buffalo Bills fans, wrong about that. Then next up, all last year, you said, oh my gosh, because they had the best record in the league, that shouldn't count for anything. It should be completely about the stats. It should be all about the stats. Look how well he's performing. Look how many yards he's thrown for. Look how many touchdowns he has. Stats. But now this season, you're claiming, well, they have a better record than the Ravens, so Josh Allen should deserve the MVP because his record is better. Just because Lamar Jackson has better stats, he shouldn't win it. We have the better record. But therein lies the problem. The Buffalo Bills 2024 season is not like the Baltimore Ravens 2023 season. If there ever came a time in the video for Kendrick Lamar to pop up,
They not like us. They not like us. They not like us.
talking about they not like us, it would be this time right here. Because if we look at the Baltimore Ravens in their 2023 season, they had the best record in the league. But not only did they have the best record in the league, Lamar balled out, especially against the competition where he was up against the guy that may have been nominated or in the conversation for the MVP. When he went up against those guys, he dominated. When it came to playing teams with a winning record, Lamar beat them 10 times. So 10 teams with winning records, Lamar won games. When the Detroit Lions were being touted as the best team in the league, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson dismantled them. Then they went up against the Seahawks, who then were being touted as maybe the best team in the NFC. Ravens dismantled them. Then they went up against the NFC representative in the San Francisco 49ers, who was a dominant team. They had Christian McCaffrey, they had Brock Purdy at the top of the list for the MVP. And what did Lamar do? He gave them the smackdown. And then the very next week went up against playoff-bound Miami Dolphins and threw for 5 touchdowns. They put up 55 points. So he dominated against teams with winning records. He dominated against teams that were playoff bound, even in Lamar's own division. 3 teams went to the playoffs, and the Ravens dominated that division. They dominated the league. And I'm not saying that the Buffalo Bills haven't been doing that thing, because they've been rolling. But these two things are not the same. When it comes to playing teams with a winning record, the Buffalo Bills in 2024 are 3-3. And yes, can't take credit away from them, because they did beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They are the only team to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They just went out and beat the Detroit Lions. For whatever reason, they won those games. They took out 2 of the best teams in the league. But for the most part, they have a cupcake division, they have a cupcake schedule, and people want to tout them. So another thing that Buffalo Bills fans love to talk about is point differential. Oh my gosh, the point differential is crazy. Like, oh my, they're outscoring all these teams. But if we take a deeper dive into it, when the Bills play teams over 500, they are +6. So they are less than a touchdown better than teams above 500. When they start playing the worst teams in the NFL, the teams that just aren't that good, they are +129. So you're beating up and you're stat padding versus bad teams, but versus the good teams, you're barely winning. Credit, you're winning, but you're barely winning. But let's look at the Ravens. When the Ravens play teams above 500, they are +66. So that means they're getting the better of winning playoff teams. When they play teams below 500, they are +20. So when you're calling out Lamar for stat padding versus the New York Giants, get your facts straight. And at the time when Lamar threw his 5 touchdowns, 290 yards, 21-25, he was going against the 7th rated pass defense in the league. So know your stats before you start spitting stuff out talking about he's just going up against these guys and making his numbers look better. 7th rated pass defense in the league. It's pretty darn good, and he tore them apart. But conversely, we're not going to talk about, and we seem to omit the fact that when Josh Allen goes up against some of these better teams and not so good teams, he does not always perform well. Lamar had 2 games that were subpar on average of what he was doing throughout the year. Still weren't bad games. When the Ravens went to play Buffalo, what happened? It was a smackdown, 35-10. People love to admit the fact that you lost to us, but it's always, well, that was early in the season. This is a whole different team. It really doesn't matter. Then the very next week versus the Houston Texans, what did he do? He went 9 for 30 with 131 yards passing. Those don't seem to be MVP stats to me. Then let's take it a step further when he went and played against the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, he had 280 yards, but he had 0 touchdowns and no interceptions. Lamar Jackson has had a touchdown each and every game of the season. So there are multiple games where Josh Allen failed to pass his team into the end zone. So when you start bringing up these stats, make sure you bring up everything. And I'm not saying that Josh Allen isn't deserving of all the accolades that he gets. I'm not saying he's not balling out and he's not one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. But what I'm saying is, Buffalo Bills fans, when you use stats, use them correctly. Do not try to use them to your advantage. When you say something, tell the entire story. That's all I'm asking. Last season record didn't matter and stats did, but this season stats don't matter, the record does. But your record is against worst opponents. And then that brings me to how I think the league is trying to amp Josh Allen up. You had Dan Orlovsky just telling you, we're trying to gift him the MVP. The season's not over, and you're like, it's his, that's it. It's bananas. And then more importantly, the league just had the schedule for week 18. And what they did was they flexed in the Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots. Another sorry team, to give Josh Allen that exposure in front of the national audience to kind of build up his case. But you're not going to put Philadelphia versus the Washington Commanders, a game that has playoff implications, a game with 2 teams having a winning record, a game where you have 2 teams balling out. You didn't flex to that game. You flexed to the game where Josh Allen's playing a bad Patriots team. And you're trying to tell me that you're not trying to push him for MVP? Let's get real about this situation. So whichever way they decide to go with the MVP, I could not care less. But what I do care about is speaking the truth. Speak the truth. I don't hear you guys talking about Brock Purdy. I don't hear you guys talking about Christian McCaffrey. I don't hear you guys talking about Dakota Rain Prescott. Those were guys that were ahead of Josh Allen in the MVP voting last year. But somehow the conversations daily always come back to Lamar Jackson and who is better. Let's just enjoy this golden age of quarterbacking with these young quarterbacks, with these next generation quarterbacks doing their thing. Can you just enjoy that? Enjoy the ride. Hope that your team finally wins the Super Bowl for your franchise. Stop talking about Lamar Jackson. And if you do, tell the truth about it. Stop making things up. And that's all I have to say about that. And lastly, let's talk about my man, Arthur Blank. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really do appreciate you, Arthur Blank. Free agency last year, when it came out that you guys were colluding with the NFL against Lamar Jackson, trying to hold him down and not give him that fully guaranteed contract. Cool. Glad you didn't do it. You said that, yes, Lamar Jackson's dynamic. Lamar Jackson is that guy, but his style of play, you can't trust it, and you don't think he's going to stay healthy. Well, joke's on you. You decided to go out there and get an aging quarterback coming off of an injury. That's the ironic part about it. You said Lamar possibly but not be able to maintain his career because he would get injured, and you went out and signed a guy coming off of an injury. And a guy, mind you, who was not one of the best quarterbacks of this era, wasn't one of the best quarterbacks of the last 3 years. But you decided to take a chance on him and give him a 4-year, $180 million contract with $100 million guaranteed. Now here we are, 14 games into the first year of his contract, and you benched him for first round pick Michael Penix. I still say thank you. You're getting everything that you deserve. And Lamar, how is he doing? Fantastic. He won an MVP. He's in the conversation for a second MVP. He's fifth in the league in passing with 3,580 yards, second in touchdowns with 34. He leads the league with 120.7 quarterback rating, which is 10 points above the next person. So there's a large gap. He's continuing to play well, and I could just imagine what Lamar could do with Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts. I could imagine. And the city of Atlanta would love it. You would be winning that weak division. Your ticket sales would be up. And what would it have cost you? Another $80 million with an extra year added and another $85 million guaranteed? But yet and still you would have had the face of your franchise for at least the next 5 years. But we all know that these contracts are only really 3-year deals, and they renegotiate afterwards. So Lamar will be going into the last year of his deal next year, and you could do some other things. But I'm so glad that you decided that you wanted to stick with your buddies. You wanted to go do those back alley deals and keep Lamar Jackson out of Atlanta. I greatly thank you. Ravens Nation thanks you. And I think Lamar Jackson thanks you as well. So I hope you are happy with the selections that you made, because now you have a $100 million quarterback that's sitting on the bench. You have a 39-year-old rookie coming in. I hope this all works out for Atlanta, because I like the Falcons and I love the city of Atlanta. But Arthur Blank, you are getting everything that you deserve. And yes, you deserve for a guy to go 7-7, have 18 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. And I think over his last 3 games, he has 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions. That's what you paid for. This is what you want. This is what you got. And I know that you were burned with the Michael Vick thing and you didn't want to take a second chance on something, or you didn't want to get hurt again, but you can clearly tell that Lamar Jackson is a different guy. He's a different animal. No pun intended. But he's just a different cat altogether. And he doesn't get in trouble. There's no controversy around him. So I don't understand how you could have had the face of your franchise. You could have had all eyes on Atlanta. Merchandise sales, ticket sales, everything would have gone up. He would have made you that money and more in his first year of his contract. But you and your buddies had to do your thing. So from this day forth, Mr. Blank, I hope you have the day that you deserve.
Nah, man, I'm cool.